Folks, Why Would You Ask That is a podcast that answers some of the weirdest questions. A lot of those are inappropriate for some listeners. If you're squeamish, easily disturbed, or just having a bad day, this may not be for you. But if you've got to know the answers like we do, stay tuned.
Why Would You Ask That? Presented by me, M, they, them, and
Karen, she, her, and
Remy, he, they.
And today we have Shakers.
what Shakers and Quakers, but we're not talking about Quakers today.
I was gonna say movers and shakers, you know?
Oh, that's what it is! God!
There we go. There you go.
Yeah!
You're fucking welcome.
Thank you. I was like, God, what's the bit? What's the bit? It's that. Thank you. Thank you for
You're
that.
fucking welcome. You're fucking welcome, bro.
Okay.
Remy's gonna talk about the Shakers now.
And you mentioned before that they made something.
Oh yeah, shaker cabinets. I had to find it because I was like, hang on, I know something about Shakers. What is it? What is it?
I only know shakers as shaker cabinets is that thing that people really love in house renovation shows.
And that's exactly what it was. It was shaker cabinets. Yes.
Do you know anything else about the Shakers?
What's a shaker box? Isn't that a thing? A shaker box? Nope, that's a shadow box.
Okay.
I don't know. No. They're a thing. They're a thing. I just googled it. The shaker boxes. They're like wood, and they're usually round or
Mm-hmm.
full shaped,
Mm-hmm.
and like they have a lid. And I'll send a picture.
Yeah, the Shakers made particular boxes that were an oval shape because the wood smells better when you cut it across the grain. So they started doing that and making them in an oval. And then they like cinched them together with like particular brass pins. And then they make basically a nesting doll of boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And people still use them nowadays.
Yeah, they're very cute. We used to sell them at the gallery.
They sell them a lot during holidays now too,
Yes.
like in Walmart, but they aren't built that way.
Right, they're not like actual.
And they're cheap. They're not actual ones. Cheap ones.
Oh, these look like nice boxes.
Yes. And they smell great.
Wait, so Shakers are a cult?
Shakers meet all the qualifications of a cult, just like the Public Universal Friends group did.
All right.
I am moving you through time from what a cult used to be to what it is now, because I think it's fascinating.
It is.
Shaker boxes, are they problematic?
No.
Okay, if you say so.
No, they're just literal boxes. Yeah.
Because
There's nothing-
you know that. Sorry.
Hmm?
I'm just like, you know that I'm thinking of equating a shaker box to that leather jacket or those jackets, the denim jackets that guy would have children bedazzle.
But they're fine. The Shakers are just an example of how early cults in the United States, you shouldn't even be able to call them a cult based on today's standards of what a cult is.
Well then.
But they do qualify. Yeah. Okay, so today we're going to work through some more 19th century groups that fall into the cult label as they transition from what a cult looked like during the days of like social change driven groups that like shouldn't even really be called a cult by our standards today, but definitely fall into the classification by their standards then. And that's like the Society of Universal Friends from last episode, led by the Public Universal Friend, up to now. So we're just doing a series because that's the mood I'm in, and you guys aren't sending in questions yet.
I know, right? God, get on that, guys.
So today I'm going to start with a group that started around the same time as the Friends group was beginning, and this group persisted until now and actually has had a big influence on our economy. So over in England, something called the United Society of Believers had been existing since like 1747. And it was created by a group of English Quakers and exiled French Protestants.
Mm.
This group became known for the like wild way that they worshipped, which included trembling, shaking, frenetic dancing, speaking in
Oh,
tongues, and
hence shakers.
yeah, and what one historian calls, quote, frenzied screeching and whirling.
Oh no.
A little scary.
So people started calling them the shaking Quakers, and then they just started being the Shakers.
Okay.
And somehow they evolved into cabinets.
Yes, somehow they've metamorphized themselves into cabinets. Exactly.
Yeah.
So their like violently aggressive style of worship eventually got them pushed out of England. So the members of the Shakers migrated over to America in 1774. And we're going to focus on, at first, just one woman. Her name is Anne Lee. She was really influential in the Shaker history. She joined in the 1750s or so while they were still in England after she had had like 4 miscarriages, and she got really disillusioned with the church that she was part of.
I would too at that point.
So eventually, supposedly, she began to have visions of God, who told her that sexual intercourse was the root of all sin and demanded that celibacy was what all true followers would have. Yes. And this is why they start to become what meets all the qualifications of a cult, because then she decided that she was the mouthpiece of God.
Ah, there you go.
And then she attracted a following around herself, and people started thinking of her as the second appearance of Christ on earth.
Oh, okay.
I feel like you can see the dovetail away from like kind of wild but actual religion into a break-off sect of that into sort of something that becomes cultish.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like porn. You know it when you see it. Can't describe it, but you know when you see it.
So in 1772, Lee received another vision from God, and she said this about it because these are her own words. Quote, I knew that I had a vision of America. I saw a large tree, every leaf of which shone with such brightness as made it appear like a burning torch, representing the Church of Christ, which will yet be established in that land. End quote. So, in 1774, Anne Lee and 9 other people that were her followers traveled over to America and settled in western New York State.
Okay.
She came with her husband and a niece and then some other people. And literally promptly upon arrival, her husband abandoned her.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
So,
Man, damn husband.
yeah. So Anne and her niece and the rest of the followers stayed and built a teeny tiny community together. In 1776, they were imprisoned for 6 months because they
Oh.
refused to swear an oath to the U.S. and were accused of treason because oath swearing was against their faith.
Ah.
What was the oath that the United States wanted them to take?
Well, you know, like renouncing England and stuff because they were from England, they were English, just
I
stuff like
feel
that.
like that's not necessary. I mean, you've already left. Like,
It takes a lot to leave in those days.
yeah, it's not like you were just like, I think I'm gonna go to America. Like, I
Well,
feel like it was not easy to do.
it wasn't easy to do, but there were people over here. That's why we had a whole Revolutionary War, you know, because some people who came from England and made a life over here in the colonies did still fight for England, while other people decided to fight for the country they were trying to make. So people had to like swear their allegiance to this country and not to King George.
Yeah, I guess
And
that's a good point.
they were like, we're not swearing to anything or anybody. We don't do that. It's part of our religion. And they said, I guess you're going to go to jail then.
Oh.
Mm.
Okay.
So they held them in jail for about 6 months, but they were imprisoned because of their faith. And so the citizens around them started feeling really sympathetic for them, which boosted their like population and their faith group. So like this is how they gained members initially.
Mm.
So they weren't
Yeah.
like attempting to gain members by doing this, but they did gain members by getting imprisoned for their faith.
Oh, what is the what's the word? They're like hipsters, or like they're no the they hadn't gone mainstream yet. Suddenly they were becoming mainstream. I don't know why this of hipsters, other than we were shakers before it was cool.
That is the hipster thing, though. So Anne, Mother Anne, as she was called, like I said, her followers thought of her as the second coming of Christ, and she just started traveling around the eastern United States preaching her gospel views at this point. Her visions that she said she was receiving from God informed her that her faith community needed 4 basic tenets, and that was communal living, celibacy, regular confession of sins, and separation from the rest of the world. Which is what they did.
I've never really understood celibacy as a tenet of anything. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, you're controlling the sexuality.
But I mean, if everyone is celibate, then like it just seems antithetical to religion to me. I don't know. Maybe maybe I don't understand religion well enough, but I always figured because I'm a Christian, I grew up a Christian, not much anymore, but I grew up one, and the idea was to spread the word and convert, turn people into Christians. And then I'm like, okay, but if that's the goal of religion, which is not necessarily true now that I think about it, but if the goal is to spread the word and to get people to believe the same things that you believe, I mean, if you all believe the same thing, then if you're celibate, there's no more people. I don't know.
Yes.
I never understood it. I know that it's a point of control. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm like,
most cults don't make sense.
Yeah. Humans are obsessed with, well, like most humans, I won't say all humans, but there's an obsession with sexuality that borders on like, what the fuck? It's just like whether or not someone is having it, doing it, enjoying it, not enjoying it, using it. It matters to some people, I guess.
Yeah. I don't get religion. I mean, you should have the option to be celibate. It's just, don't force me to be celibate because I'm not gonna do it. Because I don't wanna.
I'm gonna fuck and I'm gonna enjoy it.
That's right. You can't.
When I feel like it.
Yeah, on my terms.
Yeah, I know that in a lot of modern cults, controlling somebody's when they have sex is like a really common thing in cults, and I know in a lot of modern cults, so many of them do that because then the leader is the only one picking and choosing who's having sex and who they're having sex with and when they're doing it, and it's usually with the leader. But oftentimes, modern cults are picking, like, they're pairing up people within the cult. They're like forcibly marrying people within the cult to each other, or making those people have sex with each other too sometimes. So sometimes there's control like that, but these early ones just seem to be like, well, God doesn't like sex, so we're all going to be celibate.
God invented sex. Just going to throw that one out there.
No, sex is of the devil. Adam and Eve didn't have sex until they ate that fruit.
What if they just kept boning down and like didn't
That's
realize
what I told
that it
people.
Was sinful?
When I was like younger, I was like, I had one teacher that was like, yes, of course they partook in the parts of being a man and wife, but every other teacher was just like, they didn't talk about it. But I had that one teacher who was like, I mean, yeah, they probably, did that. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's paradise. It's supposed to feel good, right? So makes sense. And she was like, yeah. And then, when she ate the fruit, that's when she was condemned to suffer the most with childbirth. So I was like, that sucks.
Fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Well, so Anne Lee, Mother Anne, her very first vision was that she thought that, well, she said God told her that sex was a sin. So I think personally it came from having just come off the back of having 4 miscarriages. But
and a husband who left her,
and then her husband abandoned her. So, but her initial visions was God telling her that sexual intercourse was the root of all sin. So that's where her celibacy tenet was coming from. other people, like the Public Universal Friend had like a no marriage and celibacy thing, but also the Friend said, "I'm doing it, and I would like it if you all did it, but it's fine if you don't do it. I just wouldn't like you to. But also,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be kicked out if you get married and have sex. I'm just not going to do it."
Exactly. Because the public universal friend is good. Only cult leader that I would follow to the ends of the earth.
So, after Anne Lee died in 1784, her message continued to spread and colonies continued to form. After she died, somebody named Joseph Meacham became the leader of the Shakers in 1787, and he established a community called New Lebanon. That became the headquarters. He used to
Mm.
be a minister in something called New Light Baptist, and he was reputed to have second only to Mother Anne the spiritual gift of revelation also. So Joseph Meacham brought in somebody named Lucy Wright, and she served with him, and together they developed the communal living tenet more. By 1793, property had been made a, quote, consecrated whole, quote, in each Shaker community, which really just meant that everyone was sharing everything with the community,
Oh.
like communism.
Ah. Okay.
And also, incidentally, in that thing that I sent you, the little quote from the Shaker guy, he actually mentions the word communism when talking about the community that he's living in.
Wait. Had it been invented yet? Or
Yeah, let me open that thing back up because he specifically uses the word communism.
damn.
Okay. Yeah, he said, starting from such a basis, it was not strange that I early became a convert to the socialistic theories, which, about the year 1830, were so enthusiastically advocated by their respective adherents as the grand panacea for all the wrongs perpetuated by church and state. To all my other radical ideas, I now added socialistic communism, and I walked 800 miles starting from New York to join a community at Massillon, Ohio.
I would walk 800 miles.
And I would walk 800 more.
And later, when he gets there, he says, I found here one brother, Abel Knight, who had been a Quaker, then a socialist, and whose house in Philadelphia had been the headquarters of communists and infidels, a man of standing, in all the known relations of life. He was a brother indeed, and a father too. Yeah.
Hmm.
So he describes the people he's living with as having communist leanings in the realm of like sharing everything with everybody else in the community and so on.
Communism.
Yeah, this journal entry is fascinating. So, Shakers developed written covenants in the 1790s. Those who signed the covenant had to confess their sins, consecrate their property, and their labor to the society, and live as celibates. But to the points we were just making, if they were married before joining the society, their marriage was supposed to end. But a few less committed believers decided that they were going to live in non-communal orders, quote, which just meant that you would be living as a Shaker sympathizer who preferred to remain with your family and preferred to not be celibate.
Nice. So you're not a real shaker, you're just a sympathizer.
An ally.
Yeah, you'd basically be living as a Shaker, but also you wouldn't be counted as a Shaker.
Man.
But A is for ally.
Oh my god. Fuck off.
Okay. Bye.
It's because the Shakers they don't let you get married or have sex because sex is the worst sin. It's the root of all the other sins, according to them.
Not
So
true.
so the Shakers believe in perfectionism. That's their goal for the earth. And so marriage and sex is considered less perfect than a celibate state. So you're not allowed to be a Shaker if you're going to get married and have sex. But you can still live like a Shaker and be an ally and a sympathizer, but you are not going to be a Shaker. From what I gather, you can still even live in the community with them. You just aren't going to be considered a Shaker.
Urgent Shakers and experienced Chads. Sorry.
So, in the 5 years between 1787 and 1792, the Shakers gathered into 8 more communities, sort of just spread out all over the East Coast and the Midwest. After Joseph Meacham died, Lucy Wright, who he had brought in, took over and continued Ann Lee's missionary stuff. Because I guess Joseph Meacham wasn't doing as much missionary stuff and focused on the communal living, and Lucy Wright went back to the missionary part. Shaker missionaries proselytized at revivals, because revivalism was huge, as I said on the last episode, during the end of the 1700s and the beginning of the 1800s, because of the Second Great Awakening stuff in this country, the religious traditions about Christ coming back at some point. So revivals were massive. So the Shakers took advantage of it. So they did it in the New England area and in New York, but also they went west into the Midwest and a little bit further. Missionaries brought hundreds of people into the Shaker community, and so Mother Lucy introduced new hymns and dances so that their sermons would be more lively for people. The Shaker movement was at its height between 1820 and 1860.
20 and 1860. Okay.
So
It was what?
when was the Civil War?
The 1860s.
Okay, so before then.
It was at this time that the sect had the most members, which was several thousand.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read 5,000 or 6,000.
Wow, it's a lot for a cult.
It is. This period was considered its golden age, and it had expanded from New England into the Midwest completely. And in the late 1830s, it even was having its own little thing that had a name. It was called the Era of Manifestations, or they called it the Period of Mother's Work for the spiritual revelations that were passed down from Mother Ann Lee.
Oh.
Actually, there's an enormous amount of stuff that's been saved from this era. It's mostly a lot of art.
Oh.
I can show you.
I like art.
Yeah.
I love art.
There's a ton of Shaker folk art that's been saved from this time period. Let me show you.
I mean, they had to do something. They were all celibate.
What else are you going to do with all that time?
So what they were doing was doing something called they were expressing spirit gifts, quote, or messages were realized in something called gift drawings, they called them, made by the Shaker women. So that's what I'm going to show you. There's this one. This one's called A Present from Mother Lucy to Eliza Ann Taylor.
That's pretty. It's very thorough.
I like
There's
that.
a lot going on. I love it. What does it say? Hold on. Oh, I can't zoom in anymore. But there are words on this quilt.
And then there's this one.
Is it a quilt? I kind of just assumed, but...
Well, they called them drawings, so I don't think it's a quilt.
Oh,
no,
okay.
Hold on. I can click it. I can click it better and actually know what it is. Let's do that in the first place. It is this. Oh, this woman was really interesting. Well, she was a tailoress. She created manuscript hymnals using literal notation, which was a system for notating music, which the Shakers invented.
They invented music? Damn.
They invented a style of music notation.
Big fans of music. Love their work.
Well, you can thank the Shakers for that.
She was recognized, the woman who made this one that I just showed you, she was recognized during her teaching career for introducing girls to tanning and also to botanical gardening.
Tanning as in leather or tanning as in
self-tanning?
As in leather.
Okay. I'm sitting here huh.
How would you even self-tan?
These are drawings. That's a drawing. It has small cutouts of hearts or leaves covered with text. Yeah. And then also the text is calligraphy and her own art, her own drawings. She drew all of the stuff in the picture, and the leaves and stuff are cutouts.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah, well. So in the museum where you can see her stuff, there are 50 of her drawings.
Wow.
Ugh, no biggie. I have more than 50 drawings.
You can see her 50 drawings in the collections of Abbey Aldrich Rockefeller Folk Art Museum, the Western Reserve Historical Society, and the American Folk Art Museum, among other institutions. That's lovely. And there's... Open it for me, please. There's this one over here.
Oh, that's really cool.
This one has words on it too that you can't see. This one was made by someone named Hannah Cahoon, and it's called Tree of Life or the Blazing Tree. No. And it's a painting.
It doesn't help that they've kind of got the similar shape. The leaves have the same shape. And it's the blazing tree. Come on!
Oh, Karen.
I mean, on the opposite end of this, I first saw it and I was like, man, I could sure go for a tree star right now. Could always go for a tree star.
Yeah, she painted that. So all of hers are painted.
Wow.
And unlike a lot
amazing.
of shakers, she signed hers, so you can actually attribute all of hers to her own self.
Good. Sign your work, friends.
I don't think they cared about being attributed to their pieces. And
No,
she actually had children, so apparently she was not celibate.
She's just a friend of a Quaker. Friend of a shaker. She's not an actual shaker.
She's listed as an American painter, so I suppose she did. She just did other things. Lots of them are saved in museums. So in addition, shakers preserve thousands of spirit communications, quote, quote, and there's a bunch of those also preserved in museums and archives.
Hey folks, it's Remy. I'm cutting in right here to say that we had some technical issues when we were recording this episode, which resulted in losing a little bit of the recording. So I'm so sorry that this episode came up about 2 days late, but it was because I was having to fix some of this and edit some of it so that we could publish what we had. And so we're going to cut it here a little bit shorter than usual and publish a part 2 this coming weekend when we usually publish on a regularly scheduled time. So I hope you'd enjoyed this part and look forward to the next part coming up. So if you have any questions that you want us to answer, then please send some for us. February is Black History Month, and we would love to get some questions or topics to do for that. That's in theme for that while we take a little break from the cult talk.
Please, someone send us a goddamn question. And you could do this at whywouldyouskthatpod@gmail.com, or you could go to our website, whywouldyouskthat.com, and go and fill in the little form that Remy has provided. You'll find it right there on the website, easy to fill out. We're weathering bots for this, just to make it easier for you guys. Anyway, we love you. Bye. Bye.
Hey, goodbye.